Within the original 8 Warframes, here lies Ember. Fiery, devastating, the first ever fireteam Warframe. Her world on fire used to define her legacy, but with her first ever revisit came the inevitable soon entails. The loss of World on Fire is forever lamented by some, not willing to let the cruelty of time wash it all away. And then, the year is 2024, June 18. Ember receives yet another direct buff to her kit, aimed to solve the issue of hers. But truth be told, while this list of changes are nice, it never really addressed the real problems that plagues Ember since the revisit that lands 6.5 years ago. And within 2 years of time, she manages to find herself in the list of Warframes that deserves to be looked into again, cementing this as another low point of her journey. Is it because time chose to show its cruelest side towards her, or is it the fundamental problems that pulls her away from greatness? Ember's passive provides her with a 5% ability strength for each enemy affected by hit status effect within affinity radius. Depends on how much you can apply the hit procs. There's truly no limit to this passive. Even something like 200% ability strength is within reach if there's a lot of entities around. Her first ability is Fireball. You throw a fireball towards an enemy, dealing damage. Like Rhino Charge and Ripline, it has a combo system, which allows Fireball to deal up to 8 times more damage and has a longer base combo duration but no cheaper cast. Direct hits has no status proc but the AoE does, which has a base 3 meter effective radius and can scale normally with ability range. When Immolation is active, you are eligible to an additional damage increase that scales with Immolation Meter up to 4 times more and is additive to the 8 times innate damage increase. Its augment, Fireball Frenzy, gives her and allies a base 100% hit elemental mod to their weapons. And that's really it. Speaking of Immolation, her second ability is exactly that. The amount of damage reduction you gain is indicated through this meter of hers, which is 90% right now as she is in max Immolation. But do keep in mind that it has a drain increase per second, which ramps up infinitely as you keep the 90% DR up, which can be reset through Fire Blast and cause the ramp up to start all over again. Immolated Radiance allows her to gain 50% of Ember's current damage reduction to a maximum of 45%. Wow, this shit is useless. Since Fire Blast is mentioned, let's take a look at what it provides. Fire Blast grants her the ability to strip the armor of her enemies, which scales with Immolation Meter from 50% to 100%. Fire Blast is also cheaper as Immolation Meter rises from costing 75 energy to as low as 25 energy at max Immolation Meter. There are 2 augments for Fire Blast. One is Purifying Flames, one is Healing Flame. One cleanses her and allies of status effects and grants a short period of status immunity. One gives her the ability to heal and generate overguard if her health is full. Pick your own choice, I guess. And with that, it leaves us with only her 4th ability, Inferno. Ember summons a meteor to rain upon enemies within her line of sight, dealing even more damage, with a cost of 10 base energy per enemy and caps at 100 base energy per cast. It also leaves a lingering hit field, which has a near 10% chance of applying a hit proc and can be spreaded to other enemies. Exothermic also grants the ability a fixed 15% chance to generate energy up from enemies killed under the effects of Inferno, which is quite nice to have. And that's pretty much what Ember's kit currently provides. This serves to only provide you a rough idea of Ember as a frame, and it is not meant to be a comprehensive guide or something. At the end of the day, it is all meant to complement the points I want to convey in this video. The Problems of Ember. Something is wrong. On paper, Ember looks fine and dandy. She is self-sustainable as she has survivability cover for 95% of the content. Is capable of DPS by her own, complemented by strong, high potential passive. But as I said, it's all on paper. So why? What makes me come to this conclusion? Everything seems like Ember is far away from needing to be looked into. Even by the footage shown here, it doesn't seem like Ember is anywhere bad like a Corvex without Nautilus, but everyone, even those who are experienced, seems to want Ember to be looked into for some reason, and that alone indicates that something is truly happening. Ember, despite everything looking really good, comes with 13 years of poor fundamental designs and unnecessary limitations that directly contradicts with the theme of the Warframe itself. A meter so badly designed that whoever is in part of this should be absolutely ashamed of your incompetence. And a passive that is so good yet somewhat irrelevant in the long run without the intervention of Helminth. Wait, ability strength as a passive. How can it be associated with the term irrelevant? Ember's one with its augment, Fireball Frenzy, can benefit from it, and it also allows Inferno to deal more damage as the more ability strength you had. There is no way this passive can be anywhere close to irrelevant. You know what? You are actually right. The points raised here are very valid, but her kit simply doesn't demand high amounts of strength. Let me show you. The DR that Immolation provides starts at a staggering 85%, and with just a measly 125% strength, she already hit the cap of 50 to 90% damage reduction. Not to mention that Fire Blast is straight up a fixed scaling that isn't affected by ability strength, and that leaves you with only with her first and fourth ability caring about the ability strength benefit. This causes ability strength increase brings generally limited amounts of benefit to Ember's nuking prowess due to it needing enemies to be around to benefit from it. And if you are already doing the killing, there's hardly any enemies left around to be registered, or no enemies yet to be tagged with hit because you just moved to a new place. So the moment that you actually benefit from it is the moment that you are spamming Inferno repeatedly at a spot, forcing the later cast to benefit from ability strength. Thus why I initially said generally limited amounts of increase. That leaves her with her first ability augment, the only one to benefit massively from it. And if you opt for a caster focused Ember, you are absolutely getting rid of this ability, locking you out of this augment. Bro, this YouTuber is so clueless. Did he actually know that you can use it in hit inherit setups to make Ember's nuke better? The idea is right. Yes, Ember does benefit from using it due to hit inherit setups, but there's one thing that most also didn't consider: elemental weighting. An exceptional, universally viable hit inherit primer consists of few things: viral, corrosive for armor units or magnetic for shields, hit mods, and faction damage mods or raw type increases. In such case, you want both viral, corrosive / magnetic to proc the most because they provide the damage boost you want, and one hit proc is all you need for hit inherit. Most of the time, you mod at most 2 to 5 hit via prime hit mod and a 60/60, and that alone already compromises a lot of potential viral procs because unlike weapon that has a DOT build, you don't use it often. Mods like Fireball Frenzy do make hit itself stronger, but it also heavily compromises the debuff potential of both viral and corrosive / magnetic, and as you can see, the imbalance between both hit and other important element is very clear. Elemental buff augments are most suited for situations where you mod the weapon with it in mind, and is generally standalone due to primers are also not that good due to supportive statuses that I previously mentioned is not going to proc often enough to be a good primer. If you are opting for weapons platform Ember that builds around hit damage, sure, go for it. But if you are opting for a caster focused Ember, I cannot with good conscience recommend you slotting in Fireball Frenzy. Anyways, my point is that Ember simply does not benefit from her own passive much. Her passive values abilities that can snapshot the number, but none of her base abilities actually demands that. And if you choose to go for a weapons platform Ember, chances are you are replacing the ability that applies hit the fastest with the least downsides. This means that you are even less likely to get the value out from her passive with a build that demands as much strength as you like. Pressing her tree to get as much hit procs on enemies means that you are sacrificing the DR you get from Immolation, which takes a decent amount of time to build it back up just to get a bit more potential strength increase. I don't even want to mention that by doing this, you also make any hit DOT on them much weaker due to how hit works. Let's just give Ember a break, okay? Speaking of Immolation Meter, holy shit, do not even get me started. For 13 years, she always found herself not gaining full control of such power. Is fate trying to make a joke with her? Who knows? But Ember, she will persevere. The insurmountable odds, everlasting as they may be, will eventually find themselves feeble and frail. No match against the faith of the Thanos had in her eventual victory. Let's just get this out of the way first. Immolation Meter's design is trash. It is almost like someone who designed this didn't thought of any much further than quote-unquote, wow, could hit meter, let's add this in, and proceed to add a random bunch of synergy that isn't consistent in its idea, instead of making the meter impactful in a good and rewarding way. First off, the Immolation Meter is tied to her second ability and it provides several increases to the rest of her abilities. What is bugging her is that all such increases are incredibly inconsistent. Just look at Inferno. Why is the direct damage of the meteor is not affected by the meter, but the lingering effect does? What is the reason that it is not affected even? For balance? Like, for real? The core problem of this isn't you adding in the increase or not. You fear the potential that players are capable of with a 2 times more damage meteor strike because the iteration of the meter is just flawed. The meter is easily filled to max, especially when you are spamming Inferno, so the damage is basically 2 times all the time. There's no period where the meter is down below 100% for even 1 second once you spam enough Inferno. Even if you press Fire Blast, the meter goes back up to max in less than 0.5 seconds. Speaking of Fire Blast, this is her only ability that you can disperse heat and reset the ramping drain per second, not Immolation itself too, for some reason. The power doesn't make sense as well. You are telling me that a frame who based herself on heat needs to spend even more and more energy to maintain the intense heat, as if she cannot withstand the heat. What? Does this idea sound logical to you? A heat-based frame needing ramping energy to maintain the heat that Ember herself builds up. The fact that you had to define logical sense to even make the ability itself somewhat balanced says a lot about the design of the meter itself, you know. In its current state, the Immolation Meter is poorly implemented. There's no moment where the meter can drop by any other means, and tying it to her abilities only exposes its poor execution. Just take a look at Thermal Thunder on Gauss. The scaling damage matters because it is tied to his battery, incentivizing you to alternate between heat and cold to break even, which is a clear sign of good scaling design. Because of the Immolation Meter being a trash system, it makes Ember suffer from a ton of problems she shouldn't be facing. Ember herself only has one main way of generating heat quickly and one main way of dissipate heat and turn it as a form of offense. You only use Fire Blast to only reset the drain on her second ability. Maybe because DE doesn't want this ability to last forever. I don't know, could this be quote-unquote, is it automated again? Which they already fail miserably by keeping a ton of AFK strats in the game anyway. The meter itself serves very little in purpose, almost like it is just there to pretend that there's actual depth in her kit, and when you actually look into it, the facade immediately fades. Which leads me to... Out of the 5 augments of Ember, Fireball Frenzy is the most normal one. Then comes Exothermic and Purifying Flames, which is small in their issue. Starting with Immolated Radiance, I'm gonna say it, it's trash. Half of what Immolation gives isn't as simple as it seems. 90% damage reduction to 45% isn't just half. If you do the math, it goes from 10 times EHP to 1.82 times EHP, which is way more than half, and exactly the reason why this augment is trash, as it is significantly worse than any other similar augments like Total Eclipse when it comes to raw damage reduction. Hitting Flame isn't bad, just counter synergistic. EE with their infinite wisdom thinks that converting any sort of overheal into overguard is a smart idea, not knowing that damage reduction isn't applicable on overguard, because if that's the case, Rhino will simply become guard. But I digress. Overguard generation method on a frame who focuses on damage reduction are anything but bringing thoughts into design. This is just lazy, uninspiring slop that it seems like it solves her issues, but it just doesn't. And outside of many problems that holds her back, her overall power, even if those problems are magically fixed, still leaves a lot to be desired. In this age of Warframe, if I genuinely want to make something look S tier, it is not hard. Game has become toddler's level of easy where modding optimization is simply an afterthought, you know. Anyways, her main way of DPS, aka Inferno, feels quite weak in comparison when something like Hit Inherit and a strong primer isn't there to push it. Even if I am spamming it at plus 100% casting speed and full armor streak via her tree. Like, this is just Rhino with Thermal Sunder alone. I even have setups like Pyrotechnics Rhino plus Red Dot interaction through Vazarin plus Cyotit. Don't get me wrong, setups like Hit Inherit and prime my enemies with Viral plus Corrosive. She can deal great damage, but she's the hit frame. And you know. I must clarify that I personally don't expect Ember to be the best of the best, but when the difference is just that clear, it does ring some bell about her efficacy, especially when DPS is the thing that she is supposed to excel in. Yes, I can just go with Weapons Platform Ember because it is much more viable than her DPS option, but by that point, why am I playing Ember then? I play Ember to enjoy the casting fantasy of her, not another weapons platform. My guy, I play Rhino, one of the strongest weapon buffers for over 3,500 hours at this point, you know. Ember also struggles on energy sustain options. There's a reason why my build on Ember has 160 efficiency, because the moment I don't do that, my energy economy will be in the gutter with this much cast, which I have 2 casting speed Archon shards for it and also 3 blue Tauforge for max energy. Since I'm talking about builds, this is the Weapons Platform Ember build, very cookie cutter, nourished so that viral hit is fully outsourced, which allows me to mod for something different on my Sestra Incarnate. Not to mention that the Overguard augment of her is merely bait, simply because she doesn't really struggle to survive at levels where such source still matters. And when levels go high enough, all Overguard centric frames or setups outside of Rhino are reduced down to just a different taste of invulnerability gating setup plus Vazarin on the side, as their Overguard gain speed is vastly outpaced. And when Ember at her strongest state deviates away from what she is supposed to be good at, it does get quite saddening, you know. I want to clarify that at the end of the day, Ember is capable of good performance. She isn't like Corvex, where her kit falls apart the moment you don't interact with that one mission and one ability. But that doesn't excuse her from a slew of problems that really holds her back. And all the depth that she thought she had is nothing but a well-executed drawing of realism. You can see it, believe it, but all fake the moment you try to step into it. Ember suffers from having a passive that has way less impact that it seems to advertise due to her not demanding much strength to get the most out of her. And when it does have impact, she struggles to apply it widely to make use of said passive. A poorly designed Immolation Meter that gives no noticeable reward by actively interacting with her own kit, a meter that serves more as a hindrance or annoyance than benefit to Ember's overall power, and a forced interaction with her meter that in return goes against the logic of what we expect of a hit-based frame. Some of her augments really needs more power, and some of her augments really needs to be redesigned. Exothermic not able to scale with strength really limits the potential of said augment, So does Purifying Flames, having a measly 4-second base status immunity duration. Immolated Radiance is much weaker than it seems to be, and with Healing Flame going against the idea of Ember by providing Overguard, a rookie mistake in game design that even someone who doesn't study it can tell you that. Her overall kit struggles to do the one job that she is supposed to excel in, which in return forces the player to opt for something that she isn't supposed to be and defeats the purpose of playing Ember in the first place. So, to answer the title of this video, does Ember deserve a rework? Like rework by definition, not just some buzzword to say quote unquote rebuff this frame. Unfortunately, yes. There are just too many problems that plagues Ember, not just her viability, but the system as well. Viability can be solved by some proper adjustments, but systematic problems need much more than that. People need to understand that a frame being weaker in something doesn't mean that it needs rework. Reworks are reserved for a frame that has systematic problems, like Ember with her Immolation Meter and her having a weaker version of her existing much stronger ability, a problem that plagues some of the oldest frames. This is the frame that truly deserves a rework by definition. A lot of frames that you assume that needs a rework needs only some proper adjustment to their existing abilities and they will be in a much better state, but that cannot be said to Ember. And that's all for today. What would you change about Ember? Let me know in the comments below. Type some essays if you feel like it. But anyways, see you all next time. Goodbye.